One of the unexpected headlines to emerge from this face-to-face was the possibility of an energy deal. President Trump, writing in part on Truth Social, China also agreed it will begin the process of purchasing American energy. A very large-scale transaction may take place concerning the purchase of oil and gas, he says, from the great state of Alaska. Unquote. Joining us now with his reaction live from Capitol Hill is Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, a member of both the Senate Armed Services Committee and Senate Commerce Committee. It's good to see you, Senator. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. I don't know how much you know about this deal. We spoke with Energy Secretary Wright a bit earlier today. He apparently is going to begin engaging on this potential for a deal. Is Alaska going to become China's gas station?
Well, look, details matter, and I saw Secretary Wright's interview as well. But look, I want to just first do a thanks to President Trump. He has been relentless, Joe, on promoting Alaska energy, LNG, oil, critical minerals. We had a huge deal that he announced last week. So he and his cabinet have been tremendous supporters of Alaska natural resources. And by the way, that's great for my constituents, but it's really good for America. And it's a huge contrast to the previous administration. Joe Biden's issued 70 executive orders and actions singularly focused to shut down Alaska's resource development and economy. John Kerry went overseas to our Asian allies saying, don't buy American LNG, if you can believe that. He did. So it's a giant contrast. So again, a big thanks to President Trump and his team. Now look, I saw Secretary Bessent said, hey, it was the Chinese who actually asked about Alaska energy, oil, and natural gas. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. The Alaska LNG project is making huge progress right now. And I think the big headline from the president's trip wasn't what Xi Jinping was asking about energy from Alaska. It was the progress that the Trump administration made in Japan, in Korea on our big LNG project. So, you know, with regard to China, get in line. There's a lot of Asian countries that want American LNG from Alaska. It's exciting. It's strategic. It's going to help our country. It's going to help our allies, and it's going to help my state.
Well, you know, and this is something that we talked about when we were together in the Senate. I believe, by the way, that was day one of the government shutdown, or maybe it was -1. I'll have to go back and check. But it sounds to me like, and you said something important, details matter here. We don't have many of them. I want to ask you about capacity, though, because if this many people are knocking on your door, the president's already announced the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge up for drilling. Does Alaska have a roadmap to create the capacity to answer this demand?
We do. There's no doubt about it. The National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska right now is probably the hottest oil basin in the world. And by the way, just on the Senate floor today, we passed my Senate resolution to pull back Biden's shutdown of the NPRA. Bipartisan, by the way. So we have the capacity. We literally have about 50 to 100 years supply of conventional natural gas on the North Slope. The key is getting this project off the ground, which again, the Trump administration has been great on. The One Big Beautiful Bill has an energy financing facility that we're going to use to get that done. We got federal loan guarantees in the infrastructure bill for just this project. And I'll tell you this, right now, Glen Farm, which is the private sector developer of this project, has already subscribed over 50% of the capacity of this project through letters of intent. And this is a 20 million metric ton per annum project. So there's a lot of countries, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, who have already signed up with LOIs. That's why I meant, you know, China needs to get in line, but I think this project's moving fast and it's moving forward, and the Trump administration has had a lot to do with that.
Interesting. And you've got the pipeline and the means of transporting that to get to port for these nations?
No, the key thing is we got to build the pipeline. Now, look, we're building it in 2 phases, and that's the other element of this project where we've made huge progress. Worley is doing the feed work, the front-end engineering and design work. Glen Farm has put out the requests for steel and other inputs. That's coming in right now. They're talking about a final investment decision by the end of this year. The feed work being done before the end of this year. That's real progress. And once you get that done, then we're going to move forward on phase one, which is the pipeline, and phase two, which is the LNG exports to our Asian allies.
I want to ask you, Senator, from your position on the Armed Services Committee about an important issue that the president has brought about, and that involves nuclear weapons tests. It's something that we haven't seen in this country since the early 1990s. I actually remember what a big deal that was when this stopped. But we, again, are wanting when it comes to some details. Here's what the president said about this on his way home.
Yes, I would be going to Asia in a few weeks, and heck, I may be going sooner than that. I'll get debriefed from all the dialogues and all what must be done promptly in the follow-up. Could be heading there very shortly. But I don't know about that right now. But of course, Asia is the center of the world economy after the United States.
That was, of course, Secretary Chris Wright. Senator, apologies. You were referring to that interview a little bit earlier. What is this going to mean for our nuclear stockpile? Is it safe? Why would we start doing this again now?
Well, look, first of all, we're modernizing all three legs of the triad, and that's really, really important. We need to do that. The intercontinental ballistic missiles, the submarines, and the strategic bombers. We have to do that. That just makes sense, and we're putting a lot of effort into that with the administration. So that's number one. You have to keep our triad safe and up to date. In terms of testing, for decades, Joe, we've been doing essentially simulations. We haven't done, live testing in decades. But I think what the president's getting at is essentially this issue of reciprocity. If our adversaries are doing that kind of live testing, then we should be looking at it. I think that's what his tweet was about. But this goes to the broader issue of peace through strength. We are building up our military strength, but as Secretary Wright just said, we're also building up our energy strength. The Russians fear American energy probably more than anything. It's a weapon that we can use against them. And that's, again, why I'm so thankful that the president promotes Alaska everywhere he goes. We have all the resources, critical minerals, oil and gas that our country needs. It makes my state stronger, but it makes America stronger. And I think that's a message the president and his team have been sending strongly.
We also have some questions about NVIDIA with regard to national security, Senator. The president just a couple of days ago was reportedly set to offer Blackwell chips to China. Apparently, that was not something that was included in their meeting. Do you think that should be on the table, or does that make you concerned that China will have access to high-tech chips that it currently does not?
Well, look, there's a really important debate going on that. The bottom line is we got to win the AI race against China. And we're winning it right now, and that's not just chips. I know, Joe, I sound like a broken record, but that's energy, right? American energy is key to the AI race. You've reported on that a lot. The balance with regard to the chips is whether or not we think not having any chips go to China is going to enable them to create a homegrown chip capacity that can someday outcompete us. But it's a balance that goes back and forth. I know the different agencies in Washington, D.C. and the Trump administration are looking at this differently. The bottom line is the policy that matters is we got to win the AI race. If China wins the AI race, you want to talk about danger to our national security. That is going to be very significant. I think it's the number one issue we're working on here in D.C. But energy, American energy, has got to be a key component of that ability to beat China on AI.
Yeah. You can't separate the two, Senator.
No.
Are you flying home this weekend? I mentioned the shutdown. It's day 30. Do you trust the air traffic control system?
I go home every weekend, Joe, and I spend a lot of time in airports just because
you sure do.
I love getting home to my beautiful state, my great constituents. But I'll tell you this, you and I talked about it, you're right, almost 28 days ago. This is still the Schumer shutdown. In the Senate, my Democrat colleagues on the Senate, Democrat side in the Senate are frustrated. And it's not with us. It's not with Donald Trump. It's with Chuck Schumer. Look, we voted last week to pay people who are federal workers who are doing their job because they're required to. There's nothing more American than paying people for work. And yet every Democrat, with the exception of 3, voted against that common sense bill. Pay our troops, pay air traffic controllers, pay TSA. Chuck Schumer's whipping all these Democrat senators to vote against stuff like that. It's maddening. It's the Schumer shutdown. We've now voted 13 times to try to reopen our government with a short-term CR. By the way, that contrasts with the 13 times during the Biden era that we all voted for a short-term CR to keep the government open, including Chuck Schumer. So he's got a perfect record, 13 times voting to keep the government open under Biden, and now 13 times to keep America shut down under Trump. It's hypocrisy, and I'm hoping my colleagues will buck their leadership, Democrat colleagues, and vote with us and open this government. It's starting to hurt people.
Well, so much for lucky 13, Senator. I am blown away that the talking points haven't changed in 30 days, but I want to say happy belated Alaska Day to you. And when we get details on this deal with China, come back and talk to us. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska.
Joe. Thanks a lot.
Good luck getting home.